Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Chopin recordings. Yeah! Chopin's an interesting composer because all of his music that matters was written for solo piano. There are some lovely other works. There's a great cello sonata. There are a couple concertos that are very pretty. But what matters are his solo piano works. And so in this particular case, it's perfectly fine to omit those less important genres in his output. But the way that we're going to organize his works is interesting because you can do it basically 2 ways. You can do it in clumps by the type of work, by Nocturnes, Preludes, Mazurkas, Waltzes, whatever they are, Or you can do recitals by various pianists that mix them up. Now, I've done it in clumps by the type of work, but I'm really hoping that some of you will do recitals because that will bring into the mix, into our list, pianists who didn't do things in clumps, number 1. And number 2, I think it will make for a far more fleshed out and interesting collection of recordings that people who are exploring Chopin will have a great time, playing with. But in the meantime, here are the 5 greatest Chopin recordings. Number 1, the Nocturnes, Claudio Arrau on Decca, formerly Philips. The Nocturnes are so beautiful. It's like the ultimate relaxation music. They're absolutely gorgeous. But beyond that, Claudio Arrau, with his deep, burnished, supple piano tone and wonderful fluidity in terms of rhythm, and oh my gosh, was just amazing. And his set of Nocturnes has always been one of the references in the Chopin Nocturne sweepstakes. There were actually a couple others. There's Ivan Moravec, who's amazing, and then the more recent one, which was who was that? Stephen Osborne or Stephen Huff? It was one of the Stephens on Hyperion, which was absolutely fantastic. And so there are other sets of Nocturnes which are certainly worth hearing, but Arrau is certainly primus inter pares, one of the most glorious things he ever did. And so that is one of the 5 greatest Chopin recordings. Next, the Preludes. Ivan Moravec on VAI/Connoisseur Society/ whatever the heck it is now, or Supraphon, because Moravec did the complete Preludes twice. It was one of his Chopin specialties. And the earlier one came from 1965, and then he redid them on Supraphon in 1976. There's not much to choose between them. You may have a preference for the sonics on one versus the other one, but they're both beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Moravec, like Arrau, had a very specific piano sound. He cared deeply about the timbre of his instrument, about it being of the absolute highest quality. He was a perfectionist to the nth degree, but not to the point where his performances ever sounded studied. He still managed to maintain, when he actually performed, a certain spontaneity which really belied all of the preparation that went into his performances. And his preludes are just gems. There's 24 of them, and he just characterizes each one with his beautiful tone. It's extraordinary Chopin playing. And if you don't know Moravec's Preludes, you really should get to know them. Next, the Mazurkas. Arthur Rubinstein on RCA, his stereo recordings. He did all the Mazurkas. He was a Mazurker. He really was. He understood how to inflect. Mazurkas, they're really basically very simple pieces. Some of Chopin's are enormously sophisticated, particularly harmonically, but the basic structure is just A-B-A, little dance in 3/8 time with a rhythm. It's like sort of like that. And they're really delightful. But some people regard them as rather slight. Rubinstein did not. Rubinstein treated each one with the character and personality that it deserved, and he had this effortless way of playing you'll notice that there's sort of a thread running through this series. I mean, there has to be in Chopin a wonderful spontaneity of rhythm to make the music really, really float. I mean, it has to float. I like floaty music when you're doing Chopin. But it shouldn't be affected. It shouldn't be, exaggerated, because what you want to hear are those gorgeous, gorgeous melodies that he created. Amazing melodic facility and the wonderful harmonies that underpin them. And to do that, you want to project them on a rhythmic foundation. And that Rubinstein had, especially in his late career, because earlier in his career, he was a far more interventionist pianist. Later, he seemed to be able to let the music just flow through him. And the Mazurkas are, one of the iconic examples of that. I don't think there's anybody who did a set of the complete Mazurkas that really has competed with this one for the totality of its excellence and inspiration. And so Rubinstein is the guy on RCA. Next, the waltzes. Well, the waltzes. How could we not include the disc of Waltzes by Dinu Lipatti? And glorious EMI mono, or Warner now, mono. Lipatti's Chopin waltzes are just the stuff of legend. In fact, they are so legendary that I think some people talk about them without having actually listened to them. I mean, they are amazing if you do listen to them, and you must listen to them. But, it's one of those recordings that has taken on a life of its own, almost independently of the actual music. And the reason, of course, is because, Lipatti died very, very young of leukemia. His life was tragic. He didn't make a lot of recordings. There's value in scarcity. And this is one of the few, sort of complete large sets of pieces that he was able to set down. And set them down he did. Wow, baby. We'll acknowledge the legendariosity of this set, but do listen to them because they are exquisite. Absolutely exquisite. Phenomenal. Finally, the Etudes. Oh, the Etudes are so much fun. They really are. I mean, and most pianists take on at least some of them. Not everybody does all of them. And one of the most surprising and fabulous recordings of the Etudes is on the Music and Arts label from Juana Zayas, who burst upon the scene with her Chopin recordings. And she hasn't made a lot of recordings subsequently. They're a bunch. And you look on the Music and Arts website, you'll find them. But she was a terrific pianist. I heard her play these pieces live, or some of them anyway, and a bunch of Liszt things and other stuff in a tiny little New York apartment living room with a grand piano stuffed into it. And it sounded like you were sitting inside the piano. And boy, that was some recital. But her recordings have a rather more natural ambience. And let me tell you, can she play these etudes? I mean, it's not just a question of surmounting their technical difficulties, because lots of pianists do that. And they do it very well. But it's just making music out of them. Realizing their individuality and their emotional variety and expressive intensity and all of that stuff. She does it with total and complete mastery. So if you don't know Juana Zayas' recordings with Chopin, you really ought to give them a listen. They are really, really splendid, her Chopin recordings generally, but the Etudes in particular, amongst some other very, very fine versions of the Etudes. I mean, there was like Polini, and there's Earl Wild, and lots of people who've done some or all of them extremely well. But Juana Zayas as a set is really very, very hard to beat. So there you have it, the 5 greatest Chopin recordings. And I look forward to your list, whether you do the music in clumps or whether you decide to do recitals devoted to individual pianists. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting discussion, and we're going to wind up with a fabulous Chopin discography. Really first class. I know you guys are going to do it. I just know it. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.